Hello, YouTubers. Andrew Miller here. Do y'all remember that show that boys were kind of interested in, but everybody kept saying, that's a girl show? Not that one. I'm talking, of course, about the Powerpuff Girls. I'll be one of the first ones to say, I felt rather odd watching this. I mean, the title alone made you doubt yourself. The Powerpuff Girls? Boys are going to be watching this? What the heck? But when I watched it, I was amazed by how much action and humor was in it. It was such an entertaining show with good writing and actually good characters. It had a lot of heart to it. Another thing that amazed me was how dark this series got. Like, I'm serious. You had a lot of dark villains, dark moments, and it got surprisingly dark for a kid show. And I love that dark stuff. It really made you question how much is too far. But which episodes were the best? Which ones stood out the most, entertained us more, and made us laugh more, and made us had more of a good time? Well, today, I'm counting down the top 14 best Powerpuff Girls episodes. Why top 14? Because it's my channel. I could do what I want. Keep in mind, though, this is all opinion-based. You know, I'm not the sole decider of what's good and what's bad, and you guys probably have a different opinion from me anyway. Sit back, listen up, and I'm going to take you through the top 14 best Powerpuff Girls episodes. Number 14, Collect Her. We all know those geeks that have to have everything that's associated with something, whether it be comics, whether it be movies, television shows. Well, Lenny is not exactly your typical villain. In a lot of ways, he seems like the Powerpuff Girls' biggest fan. And he has everything related to the Powerpuff Girls. Powerpuff bedsheets, Powerpuff toys, you name it. Until he gets to a point where he finds his collection is complete. And he gets to a point where he feels it's not enough. Collecting is all he does. So what does he do? He steals the Powerpuff Girls' stuff. But even then, that's not enough. He begins to think, I must have more. I must have the girls themselves. When you think about that, that is a very creepy concept. Actually keeping somebody as part of your collection. And what amazes me about the episode is Lenny is one of the very few villains who actually wins. He traps them in this plastic packaging, which somehow they can't escape from, and he has them. And you would think, there's nothing special to him. He's not a superpowered villain. He doesn't have any powers that we're aware of anyway. And he was able to catch them. And the best thing about the episode is the people of Townsville recognize that the Powerpuff Girls are gone, and they know who did it. They all come together to raid Lenny's place and open up the packaging. Oh, a collector's only weakness. And we even get a nice speech from Professor Utonium understanding the difference between collecting and obsessing over someone. If you really are a fan, if you really love someone, you really want them to be free. You want them to be their own thing. That's true support. If you cage them up, if you lock them up, if you follow them, that's not true love. A very interesting and creepy episode, and it's a good one. Number 13, Knock It Off. In this episode, we meet Professor Utonium's college buddy, Dick Hardley. And the first time we see Dick Hardley, I thought, is this Dexter's father from Dexter's Laboratory? It isn't him, but he looks so much like him. What do you guys think? Anyway, we learn a little bit about him, and he kind of is really a dick. He kind of mooches off of Professor Utonium's successes, and in this one, he mooches off him in a very big way. He steals the formula to make the Powerpuff Girls, which includes sugar, spice, and everything nice, and even Chemical X, given to him by the girls after manipulating them. And what follows is a very interesting look into what happens when you franchise an idea. Like, how much of the sugar, how much of the spice, Chemical X are you going to use? And how similar the girls look and how different they look. And wow, this imagery it's amazing. Like you have some parts of the girls that are mixed together, like a little bit of Blossom, a little bit of Bubbles, a little bit of Buttercup mixed together. Some of them are big, some of them are tall, some of them are having their body parts fall off. And it really makes you wonder, like, we're supposed to take the girls as actual living creatures, and we look at these girls and they just seem like plastic dolls that we're trying to play with. So it's interesting to see that line kind of blur a bit. Like, are they real people or are they like plastic toys or a mixture of chemicals or anything? When it gets towards the end, the girls and the professor find out what Dick Hardley is up to, until he decides he needs more Chemical X, so he decides to trap the girls and steal it from them. After he accidentally swallows some Chemical X by hiding it from them, he becomes a monster himself, and he tries to suck more of the Chemical X from their bodies. And we have a very heartfelt scene with the professor and the girls when Dick Hardley traps both of them, and Professor Utonium says, "I love you." In that moment, it goes really creepy. All the other Powerpuff Girls knockoffs turn to Dick Hardley, and it kind of becomes like a Night of the Living Toys or something, like, "You never showed us love." And I didn't really watch this episode a lot. This is when I started to watch different shows, so I missed this one, but it's really good. It has a lot of heart, and it has a lot of creepy moments. I'd say it's worth watching. Definitely worthy of number 13. Number 12, Powerpuff Bluff. I gave this a lot of thought, adding this to the best Powerpuff Girls episodes, because in a lot of ways, it's kind of one of the worst. It could be one of the worst in how stupid it is. These three criminals dress up as the Powerpuff Girls. Everybody is fooled by it. And nobody can tell these people, nobody can tell them apart. Like, it's so fun. But you see, that's what makes it so good. It's so funny in how stupid it is. Like I said, like, there are these three criminals who are, robbing the Townsville bank, the jewelry store, and even the mayor's house. And each time they're stopped by the Powerpuff Girls. They're not really much of a challenge. But in prison, they find that there are these Powerpuff Girls costumes just ready and available for them. How'd those get there? And they're not even hiding the fact that they're men. Like, you can see their facial hair. You could see them all muscly. They're not really disguising their voices well. Like, "Hi, everybody. It's me, Blossom of the Powerpuff Girls. Can we have the money, please?" And everybody's like, "Oh, sure. Yeah, take the jewels. Take the money." And then the mayor, being the idiot that he is, realizes, thanks to Miss Bellum, oh yeah, they are men dressed up as Powerpuff Girls. Arrest them. And they end up arresting the real Powerpuff Girls. And they escape from jail. They finally, stop the bad guys after confusing them for each other. Like, "Oh, that guy's bigger than you, but you still look alike. You look so alike." It's like, come on, it's easy. But that's where the comedy comes from. Like, it's so obvious it's not them, but the fact that everybody is falling for it, it's like, what? The worst part of the episode is the mayor, being the idiot that he is telling the Powerpuff Girls, "Well, we're going to have to send you back to prison for escaping from there anyway." I'm serious. Which is funny, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, you've been so stupid beforehand, so lenient, letting them off easily when they break stuff, like, "Oh, you can have this and that," and all of a sudden, now you're cracking down when they didn't do anything. Yeah, they escaped from jail, but you put them in there, you stupid. It's a really funny episode and how stupid it is, and sometimes you need a little stupid. I realized, like, it's a stupid fun episode. It's worthy of number 12. Number 11, Tooth Decay. This is another episode I didn't originally watch when I was a kid, but I saw it in later years. And I really love how mean spirited it is. When you make a mean spirited episode with your main protagonists, it can be really tricky. I mean, we've seen the Powerpuff Girls series fail miserably when they tried doing this with Blossom. That Father's Day episode, I don't really remember the title, but it sucked. I felt like it completely went against Blossom's character, her being a hero and actually stealing golf clubs for the professor. That was terrible. But here, you can see why Buttercup would do this. You could see why any kid would do this, let alone a superhero kid. Bubbles accidentally gets one of her teeth knocked out. The next day, she puts it under her pillow. She finds a gold dollar. And this gets Buttercup thinking, this is an easy way to make money. So for a while, she starts causing accidents to make more of Bubbles' teeth fall out. And we think, no, she's not going to do it. And the professor catches up to her and, forbids her to do that until Buttercup realizes, I'm a superhero. I can punch out bad guys' teeth. You get where she's coming from, because you were a kid and you kind of felt this way, whether you got money for your teeth, whether you wanted money, you wanted money and you'd do anything for it. And you can kind of see where she's coming from, but yet she's still kind of taking advantage of these villains, and she's even breaking into their houses and punching them and stealing their teeth. Leading to some really funny imagery. Like, I really love how one night she's going to bed with a giant monster's tooth under her bed. It's such a great idea. It's so funny. But the best part of the episode is when all the villains are at the dentist's office. Mojo Jojo, him, the Gangrene Gang, and I think Fuzzy. And they're all planning something together. And later, towards the end of the episode, they all gang up on Buttercup in this big, I forget where it was, but Blossom and Bubbles allow it. This is like one of the few times they allow the villains to do this stuff. And I like how it kind of dives into that. Like, they kind of have this unspoken agreement with these villains. Like, hey, don't do this. We won't bother you. Like, it kind of showed how, hey, this is our job, And Bubbles the whole time, missing a tooth. And Tara Strong does a really good voice work in this, a tooth for a tooth. And yeah, karma comes for Buttercup. And this is working with mean-spirited protagonists done right. Like, it shows, hey, if you get too greedy, karma's going to bite you in the end. So it was a really funny episode, and I love the jokes. It's really worthy of number 11. Number 10, Bubblevicious. I love how crazy Bubbles goes in this episode. We all know that Bubbles is the one we often underestimate. We think she's cutesy. We think, oh, she's not really as tough as her sisters. And in this episode, she really feels that. We finish watching Buttercup beat the crap out of a monster in the training room, and we see Bubbles have her turn, and she has to defeat a toy robot at level 2. And she says, come on, give me some real challenges. And the professor's like, you're not ready for the higher levels yet. And it's like, we've already seen her take down monsters and other bad guys. Like, really? Like, she's not as tough as her sisters. And to prove that she is, she sneaks out of bed at night. She goes back in the training room and she cranks up the training room level to 11. What follows is one of the coolest action scenes ever in the series, and I think these action scenes are what sells it for boy viewers. Like, it's so amazing and graphic. She's punching the heck out of these monsters, throwing them into the fire, wiping away blood off her face, screaming and like a Super Saiyan. She tears off one of the monster's horns and throws it into his throat. She just goes ballistic in this moment, and you're like, Okay, I'll never doubt you again, Bubbles. So after that, you start thinking, is Bubbles going to be the bad guy in this? She's very extreme and, shouting a lot, saying she doesn't need her sisters, a little too rough on the people of Townsville for like walking on grass and littering and especially a talking dog holding up traffic. Convenient enough. Sorry, my dog, she's barking. And it's just really funny to see because we're so used to her, being nice and cute. And again, Tara Strong, she's an amazing voice actress. How she goes from, being cutesy and hardcore. And I will say the ending isn't really the best. It kind of ends with Mojo Jojo, I mean, Bubble says it, it's a pretty stupid plan. It's probably one of the dumbest we've ever heard. And she breaks free and punches him and everything, and her sisters come in and impress, and they finally say, you know what, Bubbles, you're hardcore. And then finally she reverts to normal. Really? Oh, shucks. And, they make amends, like, teammates for life, and they get zapped by Mojo, and then she goes ballistic again, going, why punch my sisters? Don't do that. Take this and that and this and that. It doesn't really have much of a resolve, like kind of does, but you know why you love this episode. You really love the action scene. You like watching Bubbles go ballistic. And again, you got to love the artwork and the shadows in that action scene. Like that one sells it for me. So this is why it's number 10. Number 9, Candy is Dandy. Did you ever want to see the Powerpuff Girls become addicted and deal in criminal dealings? Well, now you can. So the Powerpuff Girls continue doing good deeds, and the mayor finally decides, you know what? I just feel like I need to reward you with something. And he decides to reward them with candy, which apparently only comes in strawberry, blueberry, and watermelon flavors. And what happens with any kid who gets candy. They love it so much and they got to have more. And he says, whenever you save the city, you can have more, one at a time. And the Powerpuff Girls are waiting patiently, but not a lot of action is happening. They're not getting a lot of calls. Desperate for more candy, they decide to make a deal with Mojo Jojo. He'll destroy the city, they'll throw him in jail, and they'll get candy, and later they'll break him out. It kind of works because it's a very easy way to show kids, the risks of addiction and having too much of a good thing. And I really find it interesting how it all culminates. Mojo decides, he's a bad guy, and he decides to go to the source. He takes the candy from the mayor's office and he enjoys it, I think, in the prison cell, actually, which is kind of odd. You'd think he'd like escape and go back to his volcano lair. But the mayor's like, I don't have any candy for you guys. And the girls get really, really angry with him. Like, you just let him take it? And they confront Mojo about it, which Mojo has so many great lines on this show. Like he's so funny and how mean he is to the girl. Especially like when they confront him, he explains like, I got tired of the deal. I just thought I'd be bad and, make you miserable. And they say, you're a bad monkey, Mojo. And then he goes, I know. And they beat the crap out of him, obviously. But they kind of take it a little too far. And after a while, they realize, whoa, this is way too much. We're really getting too heated with this. And they realize the candy made them do this. They probably should cut back on it. Even though they don't. They end up going back to the office, returning the candy to the mayor and apologizing to him. And they all decide, hey, you know what? Let's all eat the candy anyway. And they're sitting there with full bellies. So it's like, did they even learn their lesson? Like, it seems like they did, but then they kind of don't. But it's a kid show. It's a very easy way to show, the dangers of addiction, especially with candy. I mean, heck, you could argue that sugar is more... No. Number 8. Meet the BeatAlls. I'm going to level with you guys. I don't really listen to a lot of Beatles music. I know about them, but they're not really my go-to band that I listen to. This episode is chocked full of Beatles references. When I first saw it, I didn't get it. But now, knowing who the Beatles are, it's like, it makes it all the more funnier, actually. What happens is Mojo Jojo, him, Fuzzy Lumpkins, and Princess Morbucks all decide to team up together to defeat the Powerpuff Girls, and they name themselves the BeatAlls. Funny how that wordplay there, right? And, they make a lot of references to the Beatles, like the album covers, them performing at like a certain rock concert, and how they're rising hits and everything. And everybody keeps talking about them like they are a band. And it's really funny how they keep referencing like the members, how one guy is a rock guy. They're like a rock band. We need to break up the BeatAlls. And it leads to the Powerpuff Girls hatching a plan to separate Mojo Jojo from the BeatAlls by introducing him to another monkey named, Hoko Ono? I don't really know the name, but referencing, that one guy's decision to leave the BeatAlls with his then wife, Hoko Ono. Again, I don't really know a lot of Beatles history. They're not my go-to band, but I know a relative good amount of information about them, like how they broke up, and I think they do a lot of comparison to the Monkees too, like as you can see with Mojo and Yoko. And what happens is, the BeatAlls, fight with trying to deal with Mojo and Oko Ono and all that stuff. And they decide to go their separate ways, and the Powerpuff Girls are able to beat all of them. And surprise to Mojo that the monkey he was dating was actually with the girls the whole time. It says he gives monkeys a bad name. Again, it's like, I'm pretty sure they're referencing the Monkees, the band, their rival band at the time, I think they are. And there's a lot of references I don't think I get, but I'm really interested in learning more about. I love how it's a complete reference to the Beatles, and it makes it all the more enjoyable. Number 7, equal fights. I think this episode handles the topic of feminism really well. The Powerpuff Girls are on a typical call, but the villain is someone we haven't really seen at all. Her name is Femme Fatale, and she really, 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 really hates men. She hates men so much that she doesn't accept $100 bills because there's a man on it, Ben Franklin, and she only accepts Susan B. Anthony coins as what she steals. And the girls chase her down, and during their chase, they actually make some interesting points, how male superheroes are more revered than their female counterparts, and how Supergirl and Batgirl aren't exactly well known because they're kind of like spin-offs in a way. And so far, the only well-known superhero is Wonder Woman, which, everybody watching nowadays, it's like, no, not just Wonder Woman. I can name so many more. You got Storm, you got Phoenix, you've got, Scarlet Witch, you've got Captain Marvel. There's so many more that you can add now to this day. But, everybody gets it. Most of the time, all we think about is Wonder Woman when it comes to female superheroes. And the way she gets out of being taken to jail is she convinces the girls that there isn't a lot of female representation in heroes and villains, and we need to look out for each other. We need to be there for each other. Essentially, she's saying she wants women to have special treatment. The thing is, the girls don't realize that she's not sticking to what she preaches. She wants to keep doing what she's doing. She doesn't want to help her fellow woman. It actually makes a great point later in the episode where the girls are saying, we need to look out for each other. And then they interview well, they don't interview. They talk to a bunch of other female victims of femme fatale. They ask them, was she looking out for me when she robbed my bank? Was she looking out for me when she broke my arm? Was she looking out for me when she stole my hairstyle? Well, she did. Like, they make these really excellent points. You know, you need to practice what you preach if you're preaching something, especially with feminism. You know, a lot of people misunderstand it as it's all about hating men and, you know, women wanting special treatment. And the thing is, no, that's not what feminism is about. Feminism is about being equal to a man. And I get it, especially nowadays, you know, with how far women have come to, you know, like get, you know, like getting the same pay as women in the job market, you know, all these rights. I get it. You know, I totally support that, you know, but again, we can't sink to femme fatale's level. We can't be man hating. We can't be doing what she does. You know, she doesn't even understand who Susan B. Anthony is. And it's also nice that the episode gives us a nice little history lesson on Susan B. Anthony. The more you know. And I really like that, you know, it took a chance with something. You know, it emphasized what feminism is, and I think it's a really good message to send to little kids who watch this. Number 5, the Powerpuff Girls' best rainy day adventure ever. That's a mouthful, isn't it? I really like this episode because it really highlights what else this show can do besides just typical crime fighting every day of the week. The girls are in the midst of a rainy day. Nobody else is outside. There's not a lot of crime during the rainy day. They're bored. They got nothing to do. Until Bubbles has the great idea of playing Powerpuff Girls inside. Blossom and Buttercup agree to do it, and the day is set. Blossom sets up Townsville, Buttercup enters as the giant monster, and Bubbles ingeniously dresses up as the mayor. There's even a moment where she calls the mayor, pretending he's a Powerpuff Girl, and then he's like, I'm on it! Goes outside, flies, and falls. And there's a little bit of clashing, like Bubbles thinks, or Blossom thinks it should be set up, you know, this way. Buttercup says, you know, the monster has to come out by surprise, and I can be Blossom if I want to, leading to them fighting about, well, who's going to be Bubbles? You be Bubbles. I can be Bubbles. You can't. And then it brings in Professor Utonium, you know, trying to settle the score, like even things out. And he gets to dress up as Bubbles. They reach a compromise that, you know, he plays with them for a little bit and he can go back to work, and it's a little funny. And yeah, they have a little fun playing around, pretending they're bad guys and doing impressions of Fuzzy Lumpkins, him and Mojo by putting a bucket on her head and everything. And after a while, you know, they play hide and seek, and, you know, they play video games, and they wrestle on the floor. It's just nice to see the girls interact and have fun. You know, it's more than just crime fighting. You know, they're girls first. And then it ends with the sun coming out and an actual monster coming to destroy the city. And it's like, oh, no more fun. We got to go back to work. Dang. A good episode with how chill it is. Very different and worthy of being number 5. Number 4, Speed Demon. When I say the Powerpuff Girls can go dark, this is probably the darkest they've ever went. And who can bring that darkness any better than him? How do I describe him? Think about a combination of Tim Curry's Pennywise, the dancing clown, with his Dr. Frankenfurter transvestite singer guy, mixed with a Red Lobster and a devil with a falsetto voice. He's the most unique villain we've ever seen, and he's kind of you don't really know what kind of sex he is. Like, is he male? Is he female? We assume he's male. You know, he acts like a male, like talks like a male, but he dresses as a female. He's kind of one of the first male villain cross-dressers I've ever come across. Anyway, I'm kind of getting off topic, but I think it starts with the girls going on vacation, and they have a race against each other. And when they've raced, they speed up and they go back in time. No. They go forward in time, hence the title Speed Demon. And they get to Townsville in a different universe, a different timeline where it goes really dark. Everything is in ruin. People are very old and dragged, and this town has been through heck. And they come across some of their old friends, their teacher, Miss Keene, and even the professor. And it's like they're in a daze. They don't even notice the Powerpuff Girls half the time. And they're trying to figure out what happened. And they slowly realize they've went forward into the future. And during that time, they weren't there to save the city when they were. And then they come across it. No, not it. Him. Sometimes it's hard to make that distinction. They come across him, and yeah, he really tests them. Like they beat him up in anger, and he just brushes it off and grows gargantuan. And the darkest part, they're surrounded by a horde of all the townsfolk people, and they're accusing them of ruining their city. It's your fault. And wow, like talk about dark. That's about as dark as you can get. And it's so funny, like watching him, like be so deliciously evil. And he never says hell, but wow, he almost did. You probably would rather him say hell. Everything went to heck. I love how dark it got. I love that it really it really blurred the lines of what a kid's show can do. So it's really worth watching, how intense it could get and how dark it gets. Just watch it, enjoy. Number 3, just another Manic Mojo. I mentioned Mojo Jojo before, but he's got to be one of the funniest villains on this show. I relate to him so much as an adult, especially in this episode where, he's just waking up from his typical volcano lair and he must have some breakfast. And he's out of eggs, which he very eloquently explains. So he has to go to the store and pick up some more. He yells at the kids in his moat, "Kids, get out of my boat. That's not made to be played in." And it leads to one of my favorite quotes from him. "I must remember to destroy those kids after my breakfast." How many moms and dads actually said that to their kids? So he interacts with the townspeople, getting annoyed at them and getting irritated by them. Goes back, has some breakfast, and he decides to make plans to destroy the Powerpuff Girls. When who knocks on his door but the Powerpuff Girls? And he thinks, this is perfect. And he thinks of ways to destroy them as he's looking for their ball. And the whole time, it's pretty much like a whole comedy of errors, like he's trying to destroy them and they're being typical kids, touching things they're not supposed to, and, like dodging, death rays and lasers, and more and more he's getting so annoyed with them. Until at the end, he finally here's your ball, take it and get out. It's just funny seeing how the girls don't really take him seriously as a villain. It's like a next door neighbor. Hey Mojo, can we have our ball back, please? And I love that concept of the show. Like, some of the villains just walk around like it's normal everyday business for them, and like everybody knows who they are. Like, they know they're villains, but oh well, they're not being evil today. It's an interesting idea that kind of was delved into in other shows and movies, but I really like how they did it in this one. It's a really funny episode. I've actually considered it in number 1, but we'll get to the next ones in a minute. Roger L. Jackson, the voice of Ghostface from the Scream movies, did a great job voicing Mojo Jojo. His very long-winded speeches, how he has to give so much detail to explain things, and his typical curses. Again, like Mojo Jojo is such a fun villain, and this episode really highlights why. Number 2, child fearing. This is one of the funniest episodes ever from the Powerpuff Girls. And it's quite interesting how it comes about. Professor Utonium has something he has to do, but he can't find a babysitter. And the mayor looks for a replacement sitter. And amazingly, he contacts, I don't know if it's the prison or if he contacts Mojo himself, but he promises, what was it? I think he promises him a pardon, like a full pardon. Actually, I think he gives him a full pardon to be out of jail just so they have a babysitter. And to the girl's surprise, Mojo Jojo is their babysitter, which is amazing that he agreed to that since he knows they're his arch enemies. But his plan is to use the girls to go and cause destruction and chaos and take over the world. Which, is kind of a good plan, like tell him they have to listen to him and tell him what, and he gets to tell him what to do, but they act as typical kids do. They demand food, they want to watch TV, they want to go to bed, they want to hear a story. And it's so funny how he deals with them, like, okay, we'll eat, but then we'll conquer the world. It's, And what's really funny is how passionate he is, like when he is with the girls. He makes them sushi for their dinner, and he's really passionate about it, like the sauce for dipping. And the girls don't like it, like as anybody wouldn't like sushi. Sorry, I don't like sushi either. And it gets to the point where he gets so tired of babysitting the kids that he decides, okay, just forget about going outside and taking over Townsville. Just rest. And he gets that little quiet moment where, like, okay, they're watching TV. Okay, it's nice. A nice parody of Barney too. Hiya, kids. I'm Blarney, the singing sea serpent. At first, it's it's nice and sweet. It's if I were a rhino, I'd stop. And the actions of the Powerpuff Girls, like, shaking the whole house, and really, really irritating. And he's taking so much abuse from these girls until he's like, go to bed now. And he tells them a very flawed story about Napoleon Bonaparte's history, until the girls, stop him and correct him. And you learn a couple interesting facts about Napoleon. The more you know. And it gets to the point where, he throws himself to the police to get out of it, to get away from the girls. It's just so fun watching, like, a villain in such misery and, like, in fear of these girls. The only thing I didn't really like about it was towards the end, like, you get the girls are having fun with him, pushing his buttons, like hitting him with pillows and everything, but then all of a sudden they beat him up like he's a regular bad guy, which we get, he's Mojo Jojo, we know he's a villain, but he wasn't really doing anything bad at that time. Like, I don't know if they recognize, he's getting out of it, or I don't know what happened. It doesn't really make sense, but they're the heroes, he's the villain, you accept it. A really funny episode, and I really considered putting it at the number 1 spot, but wait till you hear what the number 1 spot is. And the number 1 best episode of the Powerpuff Girls is Telephonies. Hear me out. It's not the darkest episode. It's not the most action-packed. It's not even the funniest episode. But I love how chill the episode is. How it doesn't really address anything major. It just deals with a bunch of hooligans, the gang Green Gang. And they're behaving like typical hooligans with crank calls. It starts out with them crank calling the narrator, and they start crank calling other people of Townsville. leading to some fun jokes. Like, okay. And they get a big idea. Instead of doing small time crank calls, why don't they do the ultimate crank call? Crank call the Powerpuff Girls, which is a really brilliant plan, you know, especially since Grubber can imitate any person they want. You know, he imitates the mayor perfectly, and they call the Powerpuff Girls, and they think the mayor is sending them on assignments. They tell them Mojo Jojo's wrecking havoc, Fuzzy Lumpkins has gone crazy, him is back, and each interaction, you know, they're just coming in fighting, and again, it brings you back to that element of, you know, the villains are just typical citizens, you know, like they have lives outside of destroying the city or taking over the world or fighting the girls. Like, we cut on Mojo Jojo taking a nap after he reads the paper, and they come in, you know, like fighting him, and he's like, "What's going on here?" And he says, "I have no intention of doing anything evil today." Like, he could and he would, just not today. Like, they have some kind of agreement and everything. And the girls even say, like, "You behave yourself, we'll come back." And he's like, "Oh, goodness, I better not snore." Dang, Mojo, you're so full of sass. And they anger Fuzzy Lumpkins. And I also love how cautious they are with him, knowing like how powerful he is. Like, they don't want to piss him off, but again, like, they were sent on assignment to beat him up. So it's like, has he done anything evil today? This is the third time that we got the call, and it's like, we're not so sure. Like, what's happening with the mayor now? And I love the reveal of him like working out. Like, they think that he's doing evil things, and he's like, "Are you jazzercising?" "Hello, girls. What a pleasant surprise." I don't have a falsetto voice. And I love the payoff at the end, where all three of the villains, you know, talk to each other like, "This happened to me, we should complain." And then they find out together it was the Gangrene Gang who set up these crank calls. And instead of going to the girls and getting mad at them for, you know, breaking in on them and beating them up, they go to the source. Like, I love, not only do I love that they beat these hooligans, the Gangrene Gang, for rightfully so disturbing their peace, but I love how they direct it towards them. Like, they're the ones causing the trouble. Like, they don't blame the girls. I mean, they blame the girls, but they don't blame them for this. And, you know, you just see them like take beatings from him and Mojo and Fuzzy, and you just go, yes. One of the few moments where you actually root for the villains in this episode. And you got Professor Utonium like waiting for that call, you know, just poor guy. And the mayor like doesn't know what to do. He calls up the girls and it's like, "Nope, not taking any crank calls from you." I just love how it's not your typical episode, and it tackles a subject, you know, like you've seen a little bit of it in, you know, other shows and episodes, but I just love how low key and how they portray their villains. You know, a TV show is not only good because of your heroes, it also has to have good villains in it, and these are really fun villains. But that's my top 14 best episodes from the Powerpuff Girls. Watching it again, I'm amazed how funny it was. Like, as a kid, I laughed a bit, but I think I was mostly focused on the action and the fact it was animated. But as an adult, I really love how funny it is. And even some of the creators' other works, like Dexter's Laboratory, and I think he did Samurai Jack also. You know, it's really funny, and it's worth, you know, checking out again. The original series, the reboot, I wasn't really interested in. Maybe it's good, I don't know, but these are the episodes I highly recommend. And I know that there's a lot of other good ones out there. I didn't even dive into like other ones that I really liked, that I found funny. These are the ones that I felt stuck out the most to me. You guys probably have other episodes that you liked, you know, like the Rowdy Rough Boys, the Dynamo. But this is what I liked. If you guys liked them, great. If you guys want to leave me your top 14 list, leave it in the comments. Have a great day, guys. Peace out.